And there are our lovely panelists. And as with the first panel, I'm going to give brief introductions to each person, and I strongly encourage you to read the full bios of the speakers because they're all amazing. But I don't want to take too much time. So I'm going to go straight into the first question, which is, how does your organization integrate patient and community engagement in clinical research and trials? And first up to answer this question is Alan Davies, who's the Senior Programs Manager for something called MESH, which is a community engagement network of the Global Health Network. Alan, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Alan Davis. I work for the Global Health Network. And the Global Health Network is a knowledge mobilizer, I guess, across the whole research ecosystem. It has two major components. First of all, it's the community of practice of over 1 million members who are health research professionals, researchers, and health workers. And it also has a digital platform. Um, we support research in places where arguably health research is needed the most. And we do this through mobilizing knowledge, making resources and trainings available for people freely, either through regional workshops or through on the online platform. So MESH sits within this global health network, and MESH is the hub and community of practice for community engagement. Um, we comprise again of the digital platform, which has over 6,000 members, and they're mostly health practitioners, community engagement practitioners or researchers worldwide. Um, and also we have the digital platform. On the digital platform, we have um, just over 20,000 unique visitors every year, and they visit to access some of our resources and our trainings. For example, one of our most popular resources has been the NIHR funded um, course, which is a comprehensive course for community engagement and involvement. It's called An Introduction and Practical Guide to Community Engagement and Involvement in Global Health Research. And it's had over 10,000 people accessing that, and we have issued 4,400 certificates over the past year or so. So the authors of that course are from Africa and Asia, and they're engagement practitioners who've been working in those areas. One of the, I guess I'll mention two or three other resources that we have, which help support engagement practice in Africa as well as everywhere else. We have a theme on MESH for advisory boards. There are kits there on how to establish and maintain advisory boards. And by advisory boards, I mean community advisory boards, as well as PPIE groups and youth YPAGs, young people's advisory groups. We have a tool on how to plan an engagement strategy, and we have another tool and guideline on how to conduct engagement upstream, if you like. In other words, how to conduct engagement that will feed into a funding proposal. So, as just to finish off quickly about me, all those resources aim generally at strengthening engagement practice, and they're all freely available and very popular. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you so much, Alan. Maybe you could put a link into the chat or into the Q&A where people can access these because it sounds really valuable.
Sure.
So our next speaker is Lillian Mutengu, who's from Science for Africa Foundation, and she is also part of the Clinical Trials Community Africa Network. So Lillian, over to you on how your organization integrates patient and community engagement in clinical research and trials. Thanks.
Thanks, Kerry, and good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here with you all, and thanks for the opportunity to speak about this work that we're so passionate about, I'm sure. At Science for Africa Foundation, as my colleague earlier in the first session indicated, we do not directly implement clinical research and trials. However, our business model in Forwards is really to prioritize R&D on the continent. That includes work in the area of clinical research and trials. We design programs, we fund science on the continent, and we also provide oversight of research and innovation on the continent across the partners that we fund. So how do we integrate patient and community engagement?
Lillian, you've muted yourself.
Sorry. Sorry. So I was just saying, so I don't know where I got lost off, but I just highlighted our business model as an organization. And I hope that all the 4 areas have been covered. We prioritize, we design, we fund, and we provide oversight. And so the question would be, so then how do we integrate patient and community engagement in clinical research and trials? For us, from where we are, because we fund science on the continent, our priority is to ensure that the scientists we fund, the innovators we fund on the continent, prioritize patient and community engagement in their research in clinical trials. One of the key ways we've been able to do this is by requiring this in our grant calls for applications. So if we issue calls, we make that a requirement. We have to have an entire plan on how the applicants are going to embed community and patient engagement. So that's one that is externally facing. Internally facing, we have a policy that guides us on how to embed patient and community engagement in our operations internally, because it has to start from us before we can then require it of our grant partners. So we do that. And then quickly, my colleague Waila earlier touched on certain aspects of the other ways that we support to ensure that we integrate this in research. And that really, in just 3 words, is that we build capacity, or we strengthen capacity of African scientists, and we do this through training. We do this through providing what we call seed grants, and this we focus on our early career researchers, scientists at PhD and postdoctoral level, and also provide resources. And Alan is here. We are currently in partnership with the MESH platform to be able to, share these kind of resources with our researchers together with others developed internally. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you,
Thank you so much, Lillian. I think there are lots of opportunities for people, so it's pretty exciting. Our next speaker is Dr. Janet Biaruhanga. I hope that I'm saying that okay, Dr. Janet. She is from the African Union's development agency known as ORDINEPAD, and she spearheads something which is focusing on local manufacturing, which is the 24 priority medical products list. So, which is a very exciting innovation. So, Dr. Janet, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, the previous colleagues, for sharing the good work that you're doing that involves community engagement and strengthens research and innovation. In our work around creating an enabling environment for the local manufacture of medical products across the continent stems from a decision of African Union heads of state and a commitment to enhance the capability on the continent to produce locally the medical products that address diseases of concern on the continent. So
I think there's something wrong. Janice, your
can compete.
okay.
So
Sorry, Janet, you
can you hear
froze
me?
for a moment, so maybe just go back a few sentences. Sorry about that. Thanks.
I'm so sorry. I think it's my network that is not good, but can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, so I was saying our work is continental and regional. So the African Union Development Agency, as an institution of the African Union, serves a triple role, whereby we implement, we coordinate the regional priority programs of the African Union. So as I was saying, the program that is a blueprint for the African Union is the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan for Africa Business Plan, is the blueprint for advancing the local capabilities on the continent to produce the medicines that address diseases of concern on the continent. So I was trying to say that our primary role is not only to support the member states and the regional economic communities to create an enabling environment for the manufacture of these products, but also it is to provide advisory services to the industry, for example. We also cut across the various pillars of the pharmaceutical manufacturing plan, which are important pillar of which is the research and innovation pillar. And because this talk here is concerning research and innovation, as well as community engagement, what I will focus on is to say that currently we have prioritized a list of 24 medical products for which we want the continent to be self-reliant in supplying to address the needs of those that are covered by those priority products. Amongst the priority products, you realize that so far we are engaging in like product by product. We have already started engaging different partners, but through partnerships to find how can we support, for example, the manufacture and access of pediatric praziquantel. This is one of the products listed, which requires a lot of research and also, community engagement, because we're doing pediatric praziquantel for preschool. We want to be able to engage the communities to find these children. So it will be very important for us going forward to ensure that our community healthcare program is linked with the local manufacturing program in such a way that the communities can be engaged in availing this preschool age community to be able to access these products, especially also to ensure that locally on the continent, we can find manufacturers and support them through the various initiatives and through partner engagements to ensure that they are able to eventually build capability, build the necessary technologies to be able to supply this product. So that's for praziquantel. There's another very rare sort of like disease. It's not very rare, but it is very evident in Africa that we don't have much of that, and we haven't invested sufficiently in providing hydroxyurea for sickle cell. That's another product that we have listed on the amongst the 24 that is really requiring a conversation together with such a platform such as this one. We are hoping that through our partnerships, through building partnerships, through engaging.
Oh dear.
No.
We seem to have missed Janet altogether, I'm afraid. So I think we're going to have to come back to her. Great pity, because the 24 medical priorities is fascinating, but I'm hoping she can rejoin us. And as soon as she does, she can pick up her discussion. Oh, there you are, Janet. You popped off for a moment. I think you're muted. Can you unmute?
I don't know what happened. Do I need to keep adding my password every other 10 minutes or so?
I don't know.
Maybe I was given some few minutes to speak. I was going on and on.
No,
But
no,
anyway,
you were not.
just
You were-
suffice to
Do carry on.
no, suffice to say that in this space where in this conversation that we are having, I'm hoping that we can engage in advancing the community engagement, advancing the relevant, the requisite research and development, and the knowledge base that would enable us to avail pediatric praziquantel, hydroxyurea, and those are the two main sort of like medical products that we have kind of pulled out of the 24 to start with and focus on. With other partners, we have started conversations around MNCH products, addressing mainly postpartum hemorrhage. And amongst these products, we are hoping that by 2050, we will be able to supply these products on the continent, and we will have created, an ecosystem that is especially targeting strengthening the SMEs on the continent to be able to, avail these products and ensure that they are of good quality. As you know, us as well in NEPAD, we do a lot of the regulatory harmonization work through our African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative. Fortunately for now, we did create the foundation for the establishment of the African Medicines Agency, which is now taking over that stream of work, and we'll be working collaboratively with the eMERGE program to advance the regulatory pathways, including of these products that we want to be manufactured on the continent. So our work is really so connected across different agencies of the continent, especially with the regional economic bodies as well. So really, that's what I can say for now in terms of how the AUD and NEPAD is engaged in this R&D, research, and community engagement, and for what purposes. Of course, you may know also that for every pathway that we select under the clinical trials oversight as a part of regulatory stream of work would require ethics committees to be established, that because they have a specific role they play in ensuring that clinical trials are conducted in the most ethical manner, and they're following the requisite standards. So let me stop it here for now, and in case we may have any issues then and questions for me, I am available to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Janet. The next speaker is Dr. Ghawda Bulhan, who is the Scientific Operations Lead at Roche, but she's speaking here on behalf of the IFPMA. So over to you, Ghawda.
Thank you so much, and it really is a pleasure to join this discussion today. As you've heard, my name is Ghawda Bulhan, and I represent Roche as part of the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations, IFPMA. And so from the industry side, we see our role not only as running clinical trials, but really as building meaningful long-term partnerships with patients and communities. So at Roche, which is where I work, patient and community engagement is not an add-on. It really is embedded throughout the clinical research journey. You've heard Joy in her presentation talk about the life cycle of research. And so to maybe introduce people as to how we do this, there's a few key ways that we bring this to life. And first is early involvement. We really engage with patients and patient advocacy groups right from the study design stage. I know this was mentioned in the first panel we had earlier today as to how do we address then patient needs. And so the patient's lived experiences shape our protocols. For example, they advise us on endpoints that actually matter to patients. You heard Dr. Tariro earlier in the first panel talk about inclusion-exclusion criteria that make sense for our patients in Africa. or the patients help us make trial procedures less burdensome, especially considering not everybody lives in an urban center, not everybody is close to a clinical research trial site. How do we go about making our research trials as inclusive as possible? So this early involvement and engagement ensures that research is not just scientifically rigorous, but also it is patient relevant. The second way that we look at things is our partnerships on the ground. And so in Africa and globally, we work very closely with local patient organizations, healthcare providers, and community leaders. And these trusted networks help us understand cultural context, how to reduce stigma, and how to create the right engagement strategies that resonate with people where they are. The third way we really think about our clinical research protocols and designs is how to reduce barriers. And we know that participation can be challenging for patients. So we integrate ideas like decentralized trials, hybrid trial models, digital tools that have actually worked very well in sub-Saharan Africa, and practical support like transport, childcare considerations, or flexible scheduling for patients. The goal is to really make participation accessible for patients and inclusive, especially for underrepresented groups like women and young people. The fourth way that we think about it is building literacy and capacity. And we invest in health and literacy, research literacy for patients and their providers. We develop materials in local languages, and that could be from posters, written materials to videos, which then support the training for healthcare providers and demystify clinical trials all around, as I said, for both patients and providers. Also, that capacity building is within the industry side as well. So with colleagues on the ground, this really then makes it easier to interface with patient groups by engaging with people who look like them, who understand their language, who understand what their daily life looks like. And this helps communities then make informed choices and build lasting confidence in research. And finally, we look at it as a long-term commitment. So not only that life cycle of research, but the engagement, the way we think about it and work on it, does not stop when the trial ends. We close the loop by sharing results with participants and communities where we're able to do so. We also work to ensure that patients can ultimately access the innovations that emerge from this research. The research is not effective if it's not actually reaching the patients who need them. So for us, it really is about moving from that transactional relationship that a lot of people have in mind when they think of private industry, and moving that transactional relationship to a long-term partnership that is rooted in trust and shared benefit. So in short, we believe that patient and community engagement is what transforms clinical research from being about data collection, and moving it to being about people. And when we do it well, then everyone benefits. Science becomes stronger, patients feel respected, and communities then see that lasting value of everything that we do. Thank you. Back to you, Kerry.
Thank you so much, Huwaida. I think you've made so many important points. It is very complex to take people along on this journey, but if you don't, then the end product is not going to be as rich as it could be, and it's not going to apply to communities that are not part of the trials or the research. So I have a second round of questions for everybody, and then we will go to questions from the floor. And just to remind people, just please pop your questions into the Q&A. There are a couple of questions now, but we can certainly take a few more. So the second question is, and it might not everybody might have an answer to this. So if you don't worry. But the question is, how do we better integrate trials into the care continuum and ensure that the system supports meaningful engagements with patients and patient advocates regionally and nationally? Ellen, I see you nodding, so you're up.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's two parts to it. First of all, how do we integrate clinical trials into the care continuum? that's a big question in itself. I think there probably needs to be advocacy at national level and also at kind of health delivery leadership level. First of all, to enable leaders in healthcare settings to appreciate the value of health research and to kind of buy into it and have the political will to establish clinical research and trials within their systems. And I think once you have that in place, I mean, I've said it as if it was an easy thing to do, but I can assure you it's not. And secondly, we need to have the systems in place to strengthen capacity of healthcare workers to be enabled to conduct the research. Because I mean, the reality is that in hospitals in Africa, they're very busy places, and healthcare workers gather data every day during their day-to-day work. And actually, it's only a small step to enable healthcare workers to be able to take that data, analyze and interpret that data, and use it to feed into improved delivery. So I guess working on those systems, but it does require advocacy to get that political will in the first place to integrate clinical trials. Just one more thing about integrating patient and community engagement there. The tools are there. I mean, I mentioned quite a few on MESH, and that it's very possible to use those tools and strengthen practice to do it. But without leadership who actually believes in community and patient engagement and in the value that can give to not just improved science, but also to more ethical clinical research. Without that understanding amongst the leadership, it's not going to take off. So, I mean, I'm echoing what Huwaida said so articulately there. But I think, it takes tweaking that system in terms of advocacy right at the top and then strengthening practice of the healthcare workers to enable them to do this research and engagement. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alan. And I'm glad to see Huwaida and Janet seem to be doing some musical chairs. So very good to see you back with us again. Oops, I shouldn't have spoken too soon. Lillian, do you want to tackle this? How best do we integrate trials into the care continuum and ensure that the system supports meaningful engagements with patients and patient advocates?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, I would just quickly want to say that, I hope Huwaida comes back. If we could have, biopharma, demonstrate that clinical research and, trials really is the front line of medical innovation, and how can they do this? I know that, pharma is usually, they have to have their return on investments. But I'm trying to see, ask myself, if I were a patient, in a hospital, and there is a new, maybe there is a new innovation, whether it's a treatment or a medical device, what would motivate me, and I'm thinking that if I'm offered this for free at no cost as part of research, I am thinking that I would enroll. And I want to feel that this could be a way that, we could integrate, clinical research and trials into the care continuum by making, these innovations, freely accessible for the patients, so that they become part of, the participants who are offering to be study participants offering to take part in these trials. But also, this would also go with the type of experience, participation experience from the patients. If there's a positive experience of participants, from, let's say, the healthcare workers, then that would also motivate for this research to happen. But I would strongly feel that for me, one way would be that, there is a way to demonstrate that, clinical research and trials are actually the front line of medical innovation. And to do that if we could start by providing some of these new interventions for free, then we could really get participation.
Thanks, Lillian. So, Huwaida, you've been challenged a little bit. Do you want to jump in there and respond?
My apologies, I got kicked out, I think about 3 times. So hopefully it stays on because the platform is telling me I'm logged in several times. So I missed a little bit of what Lillian said. I just caught the tail end. Kerry, if you want to maybe reiterate what the challenge was, because I got your original question, but not, I think, Lillian's.
Lillian, do you want to paraphrase?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can repeat for you.
Yeah.
What we're looking at is how we can integrate trials and clinical trials and clinical research into the care continuum. And so I was saying that for me, I would look at it as finding a way to demonstrate that this work really is the front line of medical innovation. And how can we do that? I am thinking that as the biopharma, it would be interesting. You could pilot this and see how it works, but really, if you have maybe a new medical innovation, let's say a treatment, maybe a drug or a medical device that you need to test, then if you offer it at no cost to the intended target user in the hospital, let's say hospital or healthcare system, then that would be a way to introduce, clinical research and clinical trials into the care continuum.
Okay, perfect. You've actually picked on the one aspect of integration that I am super passionate about and very vocal about. And we built a whole strategy for clinical research at our organization in Africa to be centered around that. So actually going back to Kerry's question around, how do we better integrate it? That was my number one point, that we need to embed trials into routine care. And I think historically for Africa, we do have very specialized centers that sit outside and that traditionally did research, but was not where patients were going for care. And so there was this separation where we would have brilliant data that would then sit and shape policy, but it wasn't strengthening the healthcare system. It wasn't then being accessible to the wider patient community. So I think the number one point is clinical trials should not sit outside the healthcare system. That is, I think, a baseline, and it really should be integrated to strengthen it. So the way we make this integration real, in my mind and in the colleagues that I work with, is in 3 ways. That being the first one, embedding trials into routine care. And so the trials need to be rather than they disrupt existing patient pathways. That means that we need to partner with healthcare providers, healthcare facilities, their leadership, and really to integrate trial design into the routine patient journey that they have, right? So whether it's trial visits, follow-ups, data collection, it really needs to then understand what the existing services are and how does it work with them. The clear benefit, not only for patient access, is also then the skills and capacity building for the healthcare workers who are there from end to end. And it's not just doctors and their research teams, it is everybody who will then come into contact with a patient along that continuum. In the end, what we see as the benefit for this integration is it reduces the burden on both patients and health systems, and it makes research feel like a natural part of care, right? It does take a mindset shift, and it will require all of us in. The second way that we
Oh dear. I think we will have to wait for Huwaida to come back. She clearly has to log in again. I'm not sure, Janice or IFPMA people, whether you can assist. There does seem to be a slight issue. But maybe while we're waiting, is she back? Oh yes, there you are. You had one more point.
Where did I drop off?
You said you had one final point. You were talking about integration and integration into the whole continuum of care for the patients and how important it is so that it doesn't disrupt their care.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so let me pick up from there. So the other aspects to really consider are how do we strengthen the collaboration with patient advocates, and then how do we build sustainable capacity? So it goes back to the question that has been posed by Lillian. And sometimes I think it's an easy thing to think that if we provide this for free, then it's going to solve everything. But I think that understanding, first of all, of what the clinical care continuum is, and as I said, it needs to come into complement and strengthen, is far more valuable for everybody, including the patient and everybody who interacts with the patient, rather than thinking that the solution will be providing something.
Okay. I think that's the best that we're going to do. Apparently, the IFPMA is trying to sort it out, but they are struggling. Janet, there you are, back again. Janet, I wondered whether you had any reflections on how best we can integrate trials into the continuum of care for patients. And if not, if you wanted to look specifically at local manufacturing and whether people would be more motivated and more interested if there's more community involvement, if people know that it's a local manufacturer. So either one of those, Dr. Janet, if either one of those you'd like to tackle, and then we will probably need to go on to the questions from the floor.
I did like the idea of empowering the community healthcare workers, because the whole clinical trials and research area is not that simple, and you need to demystify certain things for the community healthcare workers that are engaging at the community level with patients, especially in the rural areas or the hard to reach communities, and that empowerment of the community healthcare workers, for me, would be a nice way of bringing it to the very areas where this might be needed, and also simplifying it and making it look more appropriate to the community in which we are working, and also kind of like somebody spoke on affordability.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We seem to be having a few technical problems. I think at this stage we're going to, and it's nobody's fault. So, oh wait, I saw your apologies. No need to apologize. It's part of the challenge of doing business in Africa, I believe. So I think we all know the issue, and it's a good one to put on to flag that these are one of these are part of the challenges of community involvement. There you go, Dr. Janet. Do you want to finish off your point, and then we're going to go to the questions from the floor? I think you're muted. Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I keep getting out, being kicked out. I was trying to link the need for discussing the affordability issue to consider it as Of course, there's no free lunch. There's going to have to be somebody to pay for this. And so in order for us in moving forward to engage the communities in empowering them to understand how to undertake this, once we integrate clinical trials at the community level, what that would mean for them, we need to bring about that literacy that one of the speakers spoke about. Literacy at the community levels about research, demystifying certain things, making it more affordable, ensuring that there's some level of acceptability within the community of the new drug or device or whatever thing we're introducing. That way, it will be easier for us to participate more, to have more communities participate in the clinical trial ecosystem. And from the local production point of view, there is a cost that the manufacturers definitely see that one would need to also consider when linking this with the manufacturing. How do we make sure that the products that are being introduced have undergone that clinical trial oversight to ensure that their quality? How do we cover? How is that cost covered, and who covers it? Because that is the biggest area of cost, which might disincentivize sometimes some of our SMEs in engaging in especially production of the newer drugs. So I think that is an area for us as from the manufacturing point of view where more investments need to be put in, probably by government and other sectors, because private sector, I think, can participate in co-funding, but I don't think it would be quite an incentive for them to undertake that as a core activity within their portfolio of work, definitely.
Thank you so much. So we are now going to go to questions, and thank you, Joy. Joy is also part of the mix now to answer questions, and I think you've been quiet for so long, Joy. I think the first question is going to go to you. It's from Elsie. How challenging has it been to capture nuances of the different languages, cultural and contextual voices that need to be taken into account in developing the People First Charter?
Yeah, thank you, Elsie, for the question. So as I mentioned, it is still a work in progress. And I must admit that it is challenging, but essential for inclusivity. As you can imagine, what is considered respectful or inclusive can vary widely. So it's a delicate balance between being culturally sensitive and also thinking about context, so being contextually relevant. So the idea here is to kind of avoid tokenism, but in a respectful way, ensuring that the different cultural voices are not just included for optics. So challenging as it is, I think this is what makes the People First Charter for NTDs both powerful and complex. And we are also learning from what has been done, the People First Charter for person-friendly, non-stigmatizing language for HIV. So, and as I mentioned during my presentation, we continue to dialogue and to make sure that we are being as authentic and as inclusive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. There's a fascinating question from Nadine. I'm not sure who's going to answer it, but let's see. In Africa, we encounter other problems of misunderstanding and mentality in the village community. Recently, I participated in a cohort study on the human response of participants who received the vaccine against Mpox. We did the follow-ups over 24 weeks, and everything required the blood samples of the participants to be able to study their immunity over time. But it was hard for us since the community thought that we were going to sell their blood, that we were the true representatives of the devil himself, despite all the explanations provided in advance. So how would we deal with that? Does anybody have want to answer how you would address something like that? There we go, Dr.
I know that
Sorry,
there have
Janet,
been instances.
go
There have
ahead.
been there have been different approaches where, like for example, faith-based organizations are involved in these conversations. The people who are closer to the community, who are trusted by the community, are involved first, and sensitized, and you build awareness with them before then you can proceed to engage the community themselves. So I think using those kind of approaches, faith-based organizations, certain youth organizations, maybe different sports champions. I think those kind of approaches could enable building some sort of trust in these kind of processes, rather than just coming and introducing something as culturally sort of unacceptable, or kind of felt as if it is inappropriate. So looking at all of those different measures, I think would enable us to empower the communities much better, especially those that are resistant.
Thanks. It's hard to know the context. We don't have the context, who the people are or anything like that. But I think the previous session also had a whole lot of suggestions about how to build community trust. But Dr. Howeida, do you want to respond as well?
I'd like to add, because there generally is a lot of skepticism and mistrust, especially for industry, because we come from a for-profit business model, and so there is a lot of perceptions and misrepresentation, and so that's something that we've had to confront and address. I think one of the key things that has been mentioned is not only investing in literacy and trust building, but also first we need to co-create with patients, not for patients. And so this means embedding the patient voice in trial design, in policy discussions, in engagement strategies. Does the patient community feel that there is a problem, right, before we rush to bring an intervention? And so that is a good place to start. And then what they feel the problem is. It may not necessarily be the disease itself or what they're going through clinically. It may be actually just what is the impact of their families, of their community, of their day-to-day struggles. And it's really interesting what we've got as feedback, especially for patients with chronic conditions that may be debilitating. And so the second piece then, other than co-creating, is investing in that literacy and trust building that has already been touched upon, and how to demystify then clinical research, to have culturally relevant education in local languages, to have those community health workers, community advisors, to have the buy-in of faith-based communities and religious leaders. I think that is really critical for us. And the third thing that I think has been impactful has been to have that sustained engagement beyond the trial. How do we share back results to the patient community, right? In a transparent way, in a way that makes them understand what the benefit was, how this has really shaped what is coming out in terms of policy creation, in terms of now how their healthcare may be organized, or changes that they may see coming down the line. They need to feel part and parcel of the process. And I think that has really improved the engagement and the understanding that that responsibility is not one actor. It's a shared responsibility. And so when we work then collectively together, we deliver research that becomes trusted, it becomes inclusive, and then we can truly talk about things being patient-centered. You're on mute, Kerry.
Let me unmute yourself. Before you disappear, Howeida, there's another question for you. You mentioned digital tools that you've used in community and patient engagement. Has the success of the use of these digital tools been measured? Maybe you could say what these tools are first, and then what the success has been. Thanks.
Yeah, so a lot of that engagement in protocol design has come into patient-reported outcomes, what their journey is like, not only from the clinical perspective of how they're feeling maybe with the intervention, but their quality of life along the way. And these qualitative measures are turned into quantitative measures of how effective not only is the research, but the intervention that is being brought. This used to be very paper-based. But now a lot of what is happening is it's become digitized, and it may become digitized at the site level where the healthcare workers are using electronic means for their patient-reported outcomes, or for some trials, we have actually given devices for patients to go home with, and they fill in and report in how they're feeling on any particular day, or if they want to reach out to their care provider. It's been very interesting to see the uptake for chronic conditions and the uptake of that digitization has been much easier for the younger population. There was concerns around, would it be used effectively? Would devices get, lost? But surprisingly, then the retention of patients in the clinical trial, the engagement and even after has actually been higher. They're very happy to use the devices. They feel very empowered that they can communicate in real time at any time with their provider. They don't have to wait for the next physical visit to a site to be able to reach their provider or to just, share that they may be having a challenging day. So I think those tools have become really empowering for patients, and then they feel much more included in the research process and what they're also sharing back. So I think also we used to have challenges with, in between visits, do you recollect, how you felt on any particular day? But then using digital tools, you actually get much better response engagement from patients and much better quality of data as well. So that's one way that we have employed digital tools. Yeah.
We have time for maybe one more question. This is an interesting one. In the case of mpox in high burden regions and vaccination of children below 12 years old, is advocacy enough? If not, what else is needed to reduce child mortalities? And maybe also the whole thing about involving children in trials, which we haven't really touched on. I'm not, maybe, Alan, would you like to address that as a start?
To be honest with you, it's not really my field, so maybe I'll pass on that one.
All right, it was just that you're quiet. Does anybody else want to look at that? Mpox, vaccination of children below the age of 12. If anyone has experience with that or has thoughts about involving children. Everyone's shaking their head. Janet, are you still available to answer questions? Maybe I see you there, but I can't. I'm not sure whether you're involved. Okay. Okay, there you are. It's fine. It was about vaccination of children below the age of 12 for mpox, and whether there was how one would address that. But if you have it, this was the last question. So if you want to respond in a short manner, please do.
I think vaccination of children, most of the vaccinations that happen even today are among children, so below 12. I don't know exactly where the ethics around clinical trials conducted on children, what the ethics committees need to go through in order to have these approved. But I would imagine it follows the same route as the other clinical trials that are undertaken. As for vaccination of children under 12, I think that has been the practice at least in Africa for the last many years, and the challenges should be, I'm sure, the same challenges that would be in the case of introduction of new vaccines, only that we would then have to engage with the community, the parents of these children, just the same approach we did mention earlier, building the trust amongst the parents of these children to ensure that they can bring them to the facility where these trials are being conducted. So I think more the same approaches we had already discussed that are engaged amongst adults need to be done the same way for the children, because they don't make their own decisions.
Thank you so much. I think there is one more important question, which is really interesting, and maybe Dr. Janet, you can also chime in on it. It's from Ravaka. Working for a pharmaceutical company, I have noticed that the main factors preventing companies from opening centers in Africa are the risk of protocol participants not complying due to limited access to investigator sites and technology for decentralized studies. In most African countries, there's also an absence of a regulatory system ensuring data quality. From your experience, what plans can be implemented to address these issues? Dr. Janet or anybody else who would like to address these?
So it would be important to have some continental strategy or protocol that then gets domesticated by the various member states. And also this tool needs to then be updated regularly to ensure that there is alignment in terms of new science and what is applicable in the various communities. To me, as we are today on the African continent, there are very many strategies that need to be adopted by the various regional blocks. I think that approach would facilitate in ensuring that we have standards that apply and they are harmonizing their approach to domesticate these sort of strategies and data collection tools, research tools, and make sure that we update these as regularly as would be.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to add anything on that, on the challenges of working in countries where there's not great regulation or regulation?
Yeah, Carrie, maybe I can add a few things. I think we've had tremendous progress in the last 5 years, especially, and quite an acceleration, not only in the site capabilities, but the collaboration of entities that are sponsoring clinical research on the continent, as well as that regulatory upgrading that has been needed, that maturation that has been needed. Several countries are working towards and have attained the WHO maturity level 3, that is creating at least a set standard, right? An expectation, an understanding, and the skilled force that is required within the regulatory systems to be able to deploy clinical research at international levels. So I think that has to be stated as really a big achievement for the continent in the last few years, as more countries are coming on board with that ML3 WHO status for their regulatory systems, and others who are even going for maturity level 4. So really, there has been tremendous progress. The second bit, I think, of the question was around patient participation and being able to recruit patients, decentralized trials. This goes back to exactly what we're talking about today in the panel, right? Making sure that trials are relevant to patients, having the patient voice, and then you will have that buy-in. And what we talked about, especially embedding these trials into the clinical care continuum. So not making it, that's what patient centricity is, not making it an inconvenience for patients. Especially as we are now getting into more and more of non-communicable diseases. The burden of disease has really tremendously grown on the continent. So patients want to go and get care, even if it is new innovative therapies at a place that they're already comfortable with, with providers who they're already seeing on the long term, right? This is not an infection where they're coming in, getting something and then leaving. These are people who they're interacting with, and there's an emotional journey component that is really critical to understand and inbuilt, not only in the research and development side of things, but then how that integration takes place. And so I think understanding that and the growing collaboration that we're having from public-private partnerships, from civil society, from the nonprofit sector, all coming to the table is also giving all of us better insight as to where are these centers of excellence, right? We have one of the speakers who's part of the CT-CAN initiative, which is listing the sites on the continent, their capabilities, what they're currently doing, and creating that visibility and a platform, not only for our investigators, but our centers of excellence as well. So I think there's been tremendous progress and growth in the last few years. We are certainly combating that, and there's benefit not only for patients, healthcare systems, but also those of us who are driving innovation and research on the continent.
I think that's a perfect place to stop. Very positive and very patient-centered, and thank you so much. Thanks to everybody, our speakers in both the sessions, our keynote speaker. It's been a really, really rich afternoon. I think I've learned a lot, and I think the diversity of views and all of you involved in so many different things has really mapped out how complex it is, but also how rich it is. And yeah, so thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over now to Janice at IFPMA, who's going to talk a little bit further about the next few sessions that are coming up. So over to you, Janet.
Thank you, Carrie. And a big thank you to all the speakers and panelists. I think if anything, I want to recommend rewatching the video. I know I will, so I can really just have an opportunity to hear the rich discussion again. And thank you to Drs. Fala and Dr. Malongo for their presentations. I think the key takeaways that struck me, and I think, Carrie, you outlined this, was looking at the why and the how. And the why was really iterated with, we need to design things with patients at heart and show the value of research by building trust and working with patients and communities to identify better solutions for health. That's what we really heard and came through very strongly during our first panel discussion. When we moved into the second panel discussion, there was the opportunity to hear how can we make things easier for patients to participate in clinical trials? What can we do to help remove those barriers? Whether it's digital tools, childcare, transportation, or other methods. I think these were identified and a really rich opportunity for seeing how we can really include patients and communities more than we are now. Also, by looking at how we can ensure clinical research does not sit outside the healthcare system. I think that was a very powerful message that came through. But for me, and I do encourage everybody to stay on because we will have a survey for you. But what I really thought was important to understand is that the patient and community engagement does not end when the clinical trial is over. And thanks to Dr. Bulhan for pulling this out, that we really need to look at moving from a transactional relationship to something that is a collaborative partnership. So I think that is probably a good note to end on today. And just want to again thank everybody. If we could now move to the survey and also talk to you about the second webinar. So on the 2nd of October, we are going to have another webinar just like today, but we're going to drill down and focus on underrepresented populations in clinical trials. What's important about reaching out to them? Why do we need to reach out to them? And just to give you a little bit of a taste, we are going to have a discussion around research ethics. We have the president-elect of the World Medical Association, as well as the chair and executive director of the Africa Bioethics Network lined up for that discussion. And then we'll have some descriptions of project initiatives from the World Health Organization, Medicines for Malaria Venture, and others, followed by a really good panel discussion. So we do encourage you, if you've not registered yet, please do. We really enjoy your participation. And we do really would like to ask you to please continue and fill out the questionnaire, because I think it's really important that we know what we can do to make these discussions, these important discussions, better and more available to you. So thanks again to everybody. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks to the speakers. Carrie, we'll see you back again on the 2nd of October. So looking forward to that. And thanks to the IFPMA team behind the scenes for trying to manage all the tech and everything else. So, well, thank you and have a good day. Take care, everybody.